Welcome, one and all, to another episode of the Deductionist podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for stopping by. Wowzers, we're in already. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, one and all. Welcome. Come on in. Take your shoes off at the door if you want to. If that's it, if that is your custom, then crack on. Wow, here we go. This is nice. Just started reading the Monographs 2. Awesome book. Well, thank you very much. For those of you that didn't know, the digital copies of the Monographs 2 have been sent out to those that purchased them. Right? If you didn't purchase it, you ain't got one. You're waiting either for the physical books to be posted or the books to arrive to me to be signed and then to be posted. Well, this is a valid question, right? Is it not meant to be out in May? Well, so there was the Kickstarter that went out. There was the Kickstarter that went out where you could get your chance to get an early copy. And if you didn't manage to get involved in the Kickstarter before it went down, you missed out. It was 338% funded by the time it was done, which is phenomenal. There's no other way of putting it. It's phenomenal stuff. But yes, Bilbo TNP, you are correct. The official release date for the Monographs 2 is May 22nd. Just notice I've got an erroneous beard hair climbing out of my face. Look at that. One of the joys of being hyper observant, I guess. Or just having something that catches the light. Whichever way you want to look at it. It's all good. So yeah, the Monographs 2 is out. We've been getting some favourable reviews in so far. That's been great. Craig wrote a pretty lengthy one that was nice. Saeed called it a masterpiece, which is humbling and awesome. And the imposter syndrome in me doesn't know that I can accept that accolade, but I'm more than happy. I'm more than happy for him to talk about it in that particular context, in that way. Let's have a look. Hang on. I would have missed it from Bilbo. I would have missed it as a newbie then. That's rad. I just finished my first read of Monographs. The Mono first. Yes, nice. Gonna have to pre-order the second now. So yeah, I don't think the pre-orders are available everywhere just yet. But they might be. I haven't spoken to my publisher in a couple of days. I know that process was undergoing. I don't need to be kept abreast of everything in that. I have enough to be getting on with. You'll notice I am suited and booted at the moment. I just found out I have to go out to Chicago in a couple of days for some work, so I figured I would dress the part. If not, you'd be fully seeing me in my pajamas right now. That would be the case. I would be here in my pajamas. So that is why for tonight I thought, rather than have me talk about where I'm off around the world working, because there's only so much I can talk about in that regard anyway, I really want to pull it out. It keeps... Should I pull it out? It keeps catching my eye. Got you. I'm sorry you had to see that. But I noticed it, and therefore that's all I could notice after the fact. I kept looking at it from there. Curse of being a hairy man, just not where it matters. So, yeah, I mean, with the Monographs, that was fun as well. I showed my bald head, and the viewer count went down by 2. Good times, good times. So yeah, that's why I thought tonight we could take a kind of a nerdier approach, rather than looking at the application of the skills and the application of the specific techniques and the kind of lessons that can be learned from there. Let's take a broader look and look at the literary influence that Holmes has provided towards, Christ, detective fiction en masse, really, from there. And part and parcel is what's kind of connected to people's initial understanding of what the skill set is. Right? It's very influenced by detective fiction if it is that you kind of you take an indirect route and then come back to it in a certain way. So one could make the argument, I'm going to take this off for now, actually, I don't need it anymore. One could make the argument that you would not be here were it not for Holmes's literary influence, right? One could make that argument. It would be a little bit round the reeking, to be fair, it would, but you could make the argument all the same. In that, if the canon doesn't exist, I don't become obsessed with it. I don't start ranting and raving about its benefits on the internet. And then you guys don't have to suffer through my insufferable rants about about the whole thing. So, let's look at then the kind of knock-on effect, the influence to these types of things that exist, and why it is that everything purely is an opinion. Everything really started with Holmes, right? Were there detectives written about before him? Yes, right? Dupin, as recently brought to light in the Netflix series, brought to life rather, in the Netflix series, The Fall of the House of Usher. Dupin was a detective that indirectly influenced the work of Arthur Conan Doyle. So one could make the argument that there is no Holmes without Dupin. But we're really looking at it taking off and the kind of influence that exists en masse as a result of the trajectory of Holmes within that particular arena, right? So I don't really get a lot of time to relax, so you're going to have to put up with me treating myself to a little adult beverage during this particular time as well. But if you think about it, some of the major tenets of detective fiction that Sherlock Holmes put forth, and I keep talking about him like it was an actual person that, you know, he wrote the stories himself. Where, you know, and if you read the stories, you know it was Watson, and if you live in reality, you know it was Arthur Conan Doyle that way around. But I digress. I said it was a nerdier look at the whole thing. So what you've got is the genius at the heart of it, Holmes, the clever guy. How else do you make him something to aspire to and provide some sense of tragedy about to keep a story intriguing, right? It can't just be Captain Cleverpants comes in, spots something, solves it, leaves. Where's the drama? Where's the tension? Where's the intrigue? Where's the build? Where's the ebbs and flows? So what became a kind of staple, almost to the point where it became a stereotype in that way, is there was the lone genius, right? In that if you were written about in fiction and you achieved a certain degree of intelligence, by nature of that intelligence, you alienated the world and the people around you as a result, because nobody could exist on your plane and, you know, play on your playing field and whatever kind of metaphors you want to put in that type of situation. But, you know, for folks like me, that created the aspiration to learn, not the aspiration to be alone. That's that kind of thing. But if there is this person who's on a plinth, however many levels above the rest of us that would be, why would we not want to? Why would we not want to reach for that and achieve the same kind of dizzying ecclesiastical heights that Holmes achieved in that way? So if you have a genius in charge, you need to make him more endearing by putting somebody whose smarts make him a lonely person and then force him to interact with other people. Monk, Sean Spencer, Patrick Jane, Poirot. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Columbo, right? There were these lonely characters that were too smart for the rest of the world that existed around them, that they chose to exist in their own, which created that kind of false dynamic around the emotional qualities being antagonistic to clear reasoning. I mean, the whole. I mean, I don't know if this was indirectly influenced. Ace Ventura, there's another one as well. One of the Weinstein brothers, not the rapey one. One of the Weinstein family was on the search for a comedic Sherlock Holmes. You can Google this to fact check me. I've done it. I've done it myself. Was looking for a comedic version of Sherlock Holmes, and so Ace Ventura was born. Um, Monkey. I've only just started watching Monk. Maybe the past, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, just because it's come onto Netflix, and there is a lot of intrigue there in that way, and it kind of because as a chap that is on the spectrum, myself, uh, to kind of see those divergent qualities being pushed as far as they are and still function. That's my escapism in that way. That's my escapism. So Monk is he's a fantastically intriguing character at the minute. I want as I'm watching it, I want a kind of recurring storyline element, because at the minute all we really have is his relationships, which are interesting, which are holding my interest, but I want the Moriarty of it, right? But just to qualify where I am, I've just started season 2, so that might be coming. But that's kind of where I am and what I'm thinking about with the whole thing. But that comes back to Holmes in that way, and I can't tell you the amount of people that came with the understanding that if it is that somebody wanted to learn these skills, then it would alienate you by default, because you'd see things that others didn't, and you'd have to think and act and emote in a certain way in order to do that. And it all starts with Holmes. So this kind of literary influence in that particular field has had a ripple effect right the way across. And again, you can make the argument that that's because other people are picking up Holmes information and doing what they want to and doing what they can with it. Oh, I've just seen your comment, Bilbo. I love saying that as well. For people who are just listening, I'm not actually talking to Bilbo. I mean, I might not be. I'm not entirely sure. That's a mystery to be solved in and of itself. Oh, you'll love it. I'm halfway through with my girlfriend. We both have our own divergences, and we both are like, "Oh no, that's me." At some points, amazing, amazing. Bored as well. Bored, if you don't know, is a YouTube title. Wasn't just an announcement of an emotional state from me. Bored. I'm also in the spectrum, and would like to know why. In my opinion, a great part of the people interested in the deductionist field are on the spectrum. We will get back to that. We will get back to that, because indirectly, that is evening, mate. I'm both wishing Craig a good evening and saying out his saying out his comment as well. Um, we're looking at literary influence, right? So we've got an influence towards detective fiction en masse, right? Which makes ensemble shows like CSI and Criminal Minds intriguing in its own right because the characters are all smart. It's not like the standard kind of detective fiction. To a certain degree, Monk, to a certain degree, Psych, to a certain degree, The Mentalist, where the lead, the lead character, and almost said the lead detective, I suppose they are by default, but their existence makes the policeman look inept in that scenario. So the ensemble pieces are a little bit more acknowledging of the great work that police do in and around the world in that field, and which is why all of the kind of main focal points for these characters, and I'm saying which is why, I'm not a writer for it, it's purely an opinion, purely an observation on it. I don't know if this went into it, it's just a connection that one can make, is that with all of them that exist, being as clever as they all have their own brand of loneliness in their own way, right? Whether it be entomology, whether it be serial womanizing, whether it be divergence, whether it be an age difference, a generational, a preferential, these types of things to provide their own unique sense of alienation in that way, right? And oh god, it's just that's a technical note you never want to see in that way. My hard drive is running out of space, so I'm going to try and get rid of something before it all goes wrong. Let's get rid of that. See if that makes any difference. It might do. It might not. If not, I'll just have to rip the original recording from YouTube and see what we can do with it from there. That's a side note. Maybe I'll leave that in. Maybe not. Right? But technical difficulties happen. They are the snafus of this world that choose to make their presence known, and as such, we need to deal with them accordingly. But for every intelligent character that exists, there needs to be the human, the voice of the audience, to ground the intelligence, right? To be the voice of the unknown in order to kind of frame these intelligent people as being as wonderful and smart and insightful as what they are, right? So when you think about it, if you're looking at Monk, Sharona, and Stottlemyre, how do you know that? How do you know that? Watson for Sherlock in that particular way. Gus for Psych in that particular way. Most of the people that surround Patrick Jane in those particular situations. And to a certain degree, it kind of depends upon what the brand of drama that it is that you're watching in that way, because that speaks to how the writers will reveal it. But either way, these mainstream influences for it came from Holmes in that way. And to a certain degree, it is a little like providing kind of human observations. Because for a piece of fiction, whether it be literary or visual, to be engaging, there needs to be that sense of escapism, and escapism is a heightened sense of reality in that way, right? You've got, Batman, the world's greatest detective, whose only superpower, not according to Ben Affleck, is, well, according to Ben Affleck's version, he's rich. The reality of it is, Batman's superpower, other than, being rich, which absolutely does help, is his smarts. And lo and behold, Batman is lonely. A loner, by and large. For every Irene Adler, there is a Selina Kyle. And so on and so forth. So you need to have these human elements in order to frame the observations in such a way that they seem smarter. But again, talking about knock-on effects towards the way that people can kind of misconstrue almost these particular skills, is that if they are framed as the average Joe being this hyper intelligent person that nobody could ever, achieve these kind of genius level insights, you have to be some kind of Rain Man-esque, savantist kind of observer of the world, completely disenfranchised from your emotional palate. And again, this kind of human lens with which one can view the observations that these characters make, and then people become interested in learning these particular skills, it can create a kind of catch-22 in that a number of people in their initial kind of flurry into this skill set worry about their individual smarts. And I say the same thing. Intelligence doesn't really exist in this area. It's work. Right? Does it help if you're a good problem solver? Sure. But that can be learned. Right? That can be learned in that way. I could pass pretty much any test that's in front of me given enough time. But that's because I've got a good memory. Well, a trained memory. Does that make me intelligent? Or just can I remember a lot of things and bring them forth as and when I need them? I know the answer to that question. I have opinions on the answer to that question, but this is that kind of dichotomy that the detective fiction creates around the learning of these skills. If it is that you're coming to learn these skills based on finding them through detective fiction. Reacher, wonderfully smart individual, alone or lonely, rather, a wanderer, a nomad. And yet we learn about how smart he is through the humans around him. The most the most kind of disenfranchising part of the Reacher series is that, forgetting the TV shows and the films for now, if you read the books, which admittedly I didn't start doing until very late. I read like 11 or 12 of them now. Reacher rarely, if ever, works out. He looks like that genetically, right? Like he is descendant from, Zeus's thigh muscle. In that way, that's the most disenfranchising part about Reacher when you are as interested in keeping fit as I am. He says about to have a little sip of rum, but I am human, and I do have a treat every now and again. So this is what we're saying, right? When you look at the tenets of interest, it is important, in my opinion, it is important to delineate the difference between your interests in that way, right? If your interests is in the skills, then the origin of where it comes from doesn't really matter in that way, right? Whether you're wanting to learn to see the world like Reacher or be able to do the things that Patrick Jane does and whatnot. Is it possible? Of course it is. Is it possible in every situation? Fuck no. No, that's fiction, right? That's fiction. But it's certainly possible to think in the same way, to memorize in the same way, to observe in the same way. But your emotional connection to the skills itself will be skewered, harmed, changed, influenced by too much of a focus on detective fiction. To be a good observer. You don't have to be emotionally mute, dead inside, disconnected, which, depending upon the iteration of Holmes, kind of leans into that a little bit too much. But we've spoken about it many times in terms of how Holmes is actually one of the most emotional characters. When you look at the concept of emotional qualities being antagonistic to clear reasoning, emotional defined by letting go of control. When Holmes lets go of control, which doesn't happen often, oh boy, does he let go of control. I, guilty. Guilty. Doesn't happen often, and there aren't that many things that can floor it. But when they are flawed, oh boy, do I lose it. Do I lose it. Board says, have I ever watched Dexter? He also fits the isolated smart guy. Agreed. Agreed. I've watched the first season and the first episode of season 2, and I was never inclined to go back. The pacing of it really didn't hold me at all. It was a struggle to get through the first season. And then, just as a side note, when people say, oh, you've just got to get through the first season, then it gets really good. I shouldn't have to. That's my opinion on that. If it was a good story, it should get me from the start and then change and ebb and flow from there. You want my interest, get me at the start. But again, it's an opinion. They're like arseholes. Everyone's got one, and so rarely do you want to hear from it. But yeah, Dexter absolutely fits in with that kind of dynamic, and we understand the breadth of his skill, if you want to call it that, through his sister, the human, in that situation. You get, and in the girlfriend, the mother of the 2 kids in that scenario. I forget the name because it's been maybe 3 or 4 years since I last even thought about it. But these are the dynamics that are worth considering. Your interest in these skills can be sparked from anywhere, right? Anywhere. If you get a smart detective and they seem ahead of everyone, there is, for those who are interested, there is this little aspirational quality that, oh God, if only I could see the world in that way, how easy would life be? But then I would have to have X, Y, and Z as a result, and you don't. You just get all of the bonuses of noticing everything that nobody else can, or nobody else can be bothered to notice, because it does take some work to learn to see the world in this way. So what I'm saying with this, with the literary influence of Holmes, is that it is immutable. There was a museum production in London of Holmes memorabilia and artwork and the like, and it was called The Man Who Never Lived and Will Never Die. And that is kind of an interesting take on the influence of Holmes throughout it. If you want an intriguing, smart detective, he has to have all of these additional qualities. You look at all of these additional qualities en masse, and I would bet body parts that they would be influenced by Sherlock Holmes. Doesn't happen without him. He's the guy that started it all. He's the guy that started these skills. He's the guy that started forensics and the like in that way. These are the changes that we can take influence from. But what we can do in that situation is keep our grounding in reality. which so many people lose through their interests, which is wonderful, but the distinction needs to be drawn in that way. So that's the literary influence part done. Just before we draw this episode to a close, you will remember last week that I spoke about an idea that I had for taking a cold, hard, honest look at this concept of analysis videos, right? Removing away, all of the kind of glitz and glamour of the people that say, I noticed this, therefore this, and all that bullshit that exists in that particular way. Let's talk about doing it properly. I put out a vote on the community page of YouTube, and overwhelmingly, 92% of you thought I should do it. So, with that in mind, I'm gonna. So, there'll be me and an army of people that I've trained and worked with over the years. There'll be different people inside and out. And here's the thing. I'm not going to bring in anybody that is going to talk about their CVs. Because if they do, I'll kick them out. I don't want them. It's not what it's about. You don't get to argue from authority in that way. You get to argue from what matters, your insight, your information, your observation. So yes, we could bring in guys that have worked for the CIA for God knows how many years, and all of these three-letter associations and all of these law enforcement guys. If you want to observe the difference between who they are and who they aren't, go for it. I want the information about what it is that we do, or rather what it is that we will do, to stand on its own merits. If it is that you are watching one video and taking information away as golden because this person worked for whatever organization for however many years they did, then you're in the wrong, because your critical thinking sucks. Your critical thinking sucks. Right? They're just telling you that on the internet, which could be true, could not. Like Schrodinger's validation in that way. You need some more of Rolf DeBelly's work in your life. So that's what we're going to do moving forward. So I'd be interested to hear what you guys would like more information on, what you guys would like more insight into. Yes, we could do the body language analysis, even though body language doesn't exist. It's not a thing. But we could do that. We would do it in the proper way. But there are other elements to consider as well. No stone is too precious to be unturned. I know that doesn't make grammatical sense, but I was kind of twisting the phrase about stones being unturned. So, in that situation, that's what's happening. I don't know the exact date yet, but it will be happening soon. I'll get some people together, and then that will start going back out on the regular Tuesday slots, because through Omniscient, I got free webinars for you to get involved in. I got giveaways for you to get involved in. I got an hours of training for you to get involved in. I've got products for you guys to look at. We are at the point now where I can start shouting about it. It's taken me forever to build, and it's at a point where I can just start adding to it. But as I say, I'm going to Chicago in a couple of days. Well, that's not true. It's just under a week. So I don't know what will be happening next week. We will play that by ear as it goes. We will play that by ear, and I'll let you know about any changes. So until that time happens, I shall love you and I shall leave you. And I'll see you again soon. Alright guys, take it easy. Bye bye.